Welcome back to the podcast.
So glad to be here, Nathan.
Excited to have you back on. Before we dig into the content, I want to talk about the Lent service.
Nice. Let's talk about it.
2 reasons.
Okay, let's hear.
First off, one of the best services that I've been to. So I just want to say thank you to you and Mark and Parker for just
That
all
means a lot.
the work you put into it. It was just very spirit-filled. It was very, like, the worship was good. The illustration, I felt like, was just a slap to the face as far as all the things that I get lost in daily, as far as just like, this is what matters. And just being like, oh no, wait, like eternity matters. All this stuff is fading away.
Parker did such a good job on that,
It's
didn't he?
disappearing. It was so good. Yeah. And then the sermon, like you talking about the leper and him being unclean and Jesus touching him and like his cleanliness coming onto the leper and him just pursuing him even as a social outcast. It just made me so grateful for like what God's done in my life,
awesome,
what
Nathan.
he does in all of our lives as he pursues us. So it was good. I wanted to say thank you. Second thing I want to talk about is the candle. We can call
I know where you're going.
we can call this Candlegate, I think.
Candlegate.
So I feel like we need some answers because I think that a lot of people made assumptions about this candle and they were all wrong,
Oh, I love this.
including myself. So first off,
Candlegate.
you mentioned in the sermon that it was going
Scandal.
to, it's a scandal. It was going to be burning for 1,055 hours. And I think there was a lot of questions about that. So first
I
off,
did not say that
he
exactly,
said
actually.
it's going to be burning from now until Good Friday, which is 1,055 hours.
So here's what I said, because it was written in my manuscript. The name of the talk was 1,055 hours.
Yeah.
Because what I said is, from the end of tonight's service, which
Yeah.
was on Ash Wednesday, to the beginning of Good Friday service is 1,055 hours.
Yeah.
So over these next 1,055 hours, we'll meet Jesus in the wilderness. And then I said, each Sunday, this candle will be going down, down each Sunday, another layer. Now, what I was thinking in my mind
Yeah.
is that each Sunday will be lit, but then we're going to like actually take a layer of the sand off and then
Okay.
relight it.
Okay.
But I understand the way I communicated it. Folks were thinking, dude, you guys are scientific engineer geniuses. Like, you perfectly measured the amount of
I
candle
told
wax.
patients that during the service. It was very
See,
distracting.
I think that maybe everyone's brain was slightly affected by Olympic season of Winter Olympics,
Yeah.
and they had like the eternal flame in mind. That's
Yeah.
what Parker mentioned. Maybe they kind of figure like the candle's the eternal flame we're going to light, and it's going to slowly burn down for 1,055 hours. But
No.
I one person said it, Nathan. I thought, oh, one person misunderstood me, and like 10 other people said it. I was like, I think the whole church literally thinks that this is going to be burning 24/7.
That's what I thought. And I literally thought maybe it's not wax, maybe it's sand, so that if it gets knocked over, the sand puts the fire out.
Oh, yeah.
And then I was like, I wonder what the insurance policy is.
I was going to say, Matt Young, one of our elders here,
Yeah.
being a captain at a fire department, there is no way he would approve that.
I
He'd be
know.
like, dude, you are not leaving that lit when no one's in the building.
I did also lean over to my wife during the service and say, they are geniuses. I was like, the fact that they measured this so exactly and each layer is going to disappear equally. And then I was like, but what if it goes wrong? What if it all burns up within a week? But I thought that's why Parker, like, how some of it was sticking?
Yes.
I thought that's why he was like so insistent that all had to come out.
Yeah.
Because it's like we had to get
We
like,
had to get every bit
single
of this.
drop.
So what you're saying is this is almost a replay moment for you, or like any young American child when they find out Santa Claus is not real.
Yes.
It's like this moment of like, wait, there's nothing cool about this. Like, it's not going to burn the whole time. You guys are just scraping it out. That's all you're doing.
The illustration was very good, though. It
Yes.
was towards the end of your sermon, though, that I definitely got distracted. I was like working through all
Like,
the
how'd you
scenarios in my
figure this
head.
out?
Yes. I was
I
like,
love that, Nathan.
ChatGPT was definitely involved if they figured it out.
Oh, man.
So, as far as the sermon, can you give us like a quick, like 2-3 minute recap of the sermon?
Love to. Ecclesiastes 5, 1 through 7. And what we talked about essentially was leadership presence
Yeah.
in our lives, because the teacher is basically taking a small break from the content we've learned in the first 4 chapters and begins to talk about what does it look like to go before God, to know your role before God, to know what is wise to say, what's not wise to say, what's it mean to know how to silence our own noise and to listen to the Lord. And then the more that we know our role before him, those first 7 verses make clear, Nathan, enables us to know our role before others. Mm-hmm. So the whole gist of it was basically, now that we've been through 4 chapters of this book, and we've seen how complicated life under the sun can be, mm-hmm. how difficult and confusing life can be, what kind of guides do we want to be to other people in this world under the sun? Do we want to be those who know our role before the Lord, and then therefore we know how to silence our noise and how to speak wisely and make a note with our words, was the metaphor I used? Do we want to lead people that way, or do we want to just be more noise in a noisy world? That's the gist. That was the direction of Sunday's sermon.
Yeah, awesome. I want to lean into, with our first point, practical ways that we can silence the noise, because our culture is so loud. There's so many things that are vying for our attention, our time. It's almost like it's expected that you're supposed to have something on all the time. Like, you're supposed to have a podcast playing. You're supposed to, I'm like almost probably preaching against the podcast right now. You're supposed to have a podcast playing. It's like, even a stoplight, it's like, respond to the next text message, like social media, all of it. And just busyness in our schedules as well too. And I know for myself, I find it very difficult to leave space to just sit and hear the Lord. And I don't think I'm very good at that. I'm trying to get better. There's even just in the last couple of weeks, I've tried to start kind of practically finding ways to have pockets of time that are silent, but I have to really fight for those, and they're very small. So can you give me some practical ways that maybe you've found in your life that you've been able to silence the noise and create that space for yourself?
Yeah, that's great, Nathan. I think the main thing I want to drive into on this is when I say silence noise, the main thing I meant on Sunday, and there's many ways we could take this, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. I am largely thinking about emotional noise.
Okay.
Largely thinking about in this world where I'm wrestling with, okay, my life is like a vapor. It's like nostalgia. It's here and gone. And as we looked at in chapter 3, sandcastles.
Yeah.
I'm building these sandcastles, but the tide is taking them out, and I have no control over the times changing. And you look at all these things that Ecclesiastes has been showing us, and you begin to realize, man, I'm not in ultimate control of my life. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things going on that I don't understand. God has this plan that's perfect, but I don't understand it from beginning to end, as we already saw in this book. And so once you start putting all that together, now I'm going to be in my relationships with the Lord and other people.
Yeah.
How do I really have ears that are listening to the Lord and listening to others and seeing what's going on, and I'm not just always wrapped up in my own emotional noise? Mm-hmm. So in terms of the question you asked was, what's a practical way to deal with that?
Yeah.
I think looking at the life of Jesus in the Gospels, that is a primary way, and I don't know if there's a better way to do this. You know, when you read stories in the Bible about Jesus's life, I try to imagine, what if I had never read this story before?
Yeah.
Try to read this like I've never read it before. Look at the situation, look at the issues, and then process, is it normal that Jesus would say this next?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you've read it enough, you know what's going to happen. And so maybe sometimes you lose the sense of wonder.
Yeah.
But like, you see the pressure that Jesus would be under in a situation, or you see a disciple misunderstanding something. And then you see the way Jesus approaches it. And if you put yourself in those shoes, or as I have before, I would think, how would I ever approach a situation like that? Like, clearly Jesus is so in tune. I mean, he's the Son of God, so obviously, but so in tune with the voice of the Father, so in tune with the work of the Spirit, that he is really able, as he's in any situation, to respond in a way that is clear and directed and true. And he's doing this incredible work in people's lives because he's not just wrapped up in inner noise because of all the circumstances going on around him.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many ways, I think, brother, that we could help to silence that noise. And I do think some of it is have some solitude and have a meaningful prayer life, maybe journal. I love taking bike rides when the weather's nice.
Yeah.
Getting out or going and working out at the gym. I
Yeah.
mean, lots of things like that. But man, looking at the life of Jesus and how he responds and how he works through situations just makes a person slow down and think, gosh, what does it look like to be in a space that I could process through the word and the Spirit and what the Father is saying, and not just be drawn so into the circumstance of something that I'm actually not even responding to the person anymore. I'm just basically responding to my own noise.
Yeah.
What I'm saying and talking and what I'm doing is really more about me trying to deal with something here and not so much actually dealing with what's right in front of me. And of course, that's why I brought up the story of Cain from Genesis 4, because it's such an example of someone who is so caught up in their own inner noise.
Yeah. It's almost as though we're reacting to our own emotions as we're going through life, and our own insecurities, our own need for approval, ego, all of these things, instead of ever being able to even emotionally connect or relate to other people and to God. It's like we're almost seeing everything through the lens of ourselves. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Like almost in an ironic way, right? Back to Cain's story. Cain saw his brother as the issue.
Yeah.
I'm mad. I'm upset. I'm envious. I'm jealous. I'm having all these issues because my brother. It's my brother is the problem.
Yeah.
And God is saying to him, "It's you, Cain. It's your heart. It's your jealousy. It's your envy. This is a you issue."
Yeah.
He can never quite see that. He doesn't settle into that reality. He doesn't accept his role as a brother to Abel, a son of Adam and Eve, a creature of the Lord. And so he kills Abel. He kills the problem.
Yeah.
And then come to find out it doesn't do anything in his life because that was never the problem.
Yeah.
And so I just think there's situations that come up and a person's working through, gosh, this is happening in my marriage or my child or my workplace or with my neighbor.
Yeah.
This is happening in my government or with my president or with this situation. And the thought is, if we could just work on this or these people or whatever else, and basically we think we're trying to address something out here, but we're just coming up with solutions and ideas that are really fixing problems here.
Yeah.
Like this social media post is making me feel a certain way. That's the main thing I'm accomplishing, not really thinking through what it's doing beyond me.
Yeah.
And I think in Ecclesiastes 5, when he says, God is in heaven and you are on earth, let your words be few.
Yeah.
And to fear God, and to be aware of what it means to submit to him. I think a lot of that is language of, hey, slow down and guard your steps.
Yeah.
And think through clearly, what kind of a presence do you want to carry with yourself in this world? Because it's a hard world and it's confusing. It's difficult. Lots of folks are looking for answers. You can be an excellent guide. All of us can be, but it's not just going to happen without us slowing down, guarding our steps, knowing our role, silencing our noise.
Yeah.
That's some of those things.
Yeah. That really plays into you also mentioning seeing yourself as the bad character in church, but probably really in any situation. You kind of mentioned with Cain, he killed Abel and he thought he killed the problem, but then the problem was himself, and that problem was going to follow him his whole life. Like he was stuck with the problem.
Yep.
And I know it's very easy to tend to get focused on what other people are doing wrong. Like you mentioned, politicians or society or your friends or your family. And while there might be issues there, you can't control them.
That's right.
You can't change them. And the only person that you can change with Christ's power is yourself. And oftentimes too, it's interesting. I think that when you change, it gives other people around you permission to change too. The best way to lead is just through leading yourself towards Jesus. So that's very powerful, very good. How do you, I guess, differentiate if we have this view of going through life, seeing ourselves as the bad character? That's obviously healthy because you're able to actually change yourself through the power of Christ. But how do we differentiate when that can actually start? Like, when do we need to separate ourselves maybe from other people and their issues? Because obviously you could be in a church situation and always super analyzing, like, what could I do better? How can I be growing? Or you could be in a marriage where you could be thinking through, how could I be growing? How could I be doing better? And growing yourself, growing towards Jesus. But at some point, the situation that you are in is going to continue to hold you back.
Yes. So let me say back to you what I think I hear you saying, brother. I pointed out in verse 1, our teacher says, guard your steps when you go to the house of God. And I pointed out that's odd language to use, to guard your steps, because you tend to use that language if you're maybe around a bad character who's lurking in the corner. Guard your steps when you're walking in a dark alley at night or something, to make sure that there's not any danger there, you know? And so to say, why would I guard my steps at church? And the teacher's point is, guard your steps from yourself, that you might go to church and hear what's going on, but never really listen. And learning how to silence your noise and know your role. So Nathan, I think what you're saying is, or what you're asking, and so push back on me if this is not what you're saying. Essentially, yes, we have to watch out for ourselves to keep out of our own way. But then you're saying, but also there can be others involved in this. There can be issues or sins or brokenness in other people that are also impacting us. And are you basically asking, how do we differentiate whether this is a me thing I'm working through, or what if there are some others who are acting as bad characters in my life, to be aware of that? Is that what you mean?
That's what I'm asking, because we have to start with ourselves. But it does seem like it could lead to situations where it's like, if we always emphasize only ourselves, you could have people trapped in like abusive situations. Absolutely,
yeah. So I mentioned on Sunday, right, that there are things in the Word for sure where Jesus talks about unhealthy spiritual communities. Jesus points out wolves in sheep clothing and pastors that are dangerous, leaders that are not there to love the sheep, but to fleece the sheep. And so that certainly exists. And then, of course, that'd be like the highest level. People that are really aiming to legitimately take advantage and to use someone for their own benefit or pleasure, or just to be cruel. Of course, at a lower level, you have tons of people in the world, Nathan, that they don't really aim. They're not aiming to be damaging. They're just so out of sorts in their own life that they don't have any clarity on boundaries in their own life or anybody else's, and they're not trying to hurt someone, but if you just kind of let them have their way or do their thing, they're so out of sorts that in their world, they just don't see how their world works unless they're at the center and everyone else is in an orbit kind of surrounding and serving and helping them. And they don't have a space yet. They haven't grown to a place yet that they can imagine not being at the center and everyone sort of working around them and their issues and their needs and their anxieties, you know? And there's way more people in our world are like that than they are legitimate abusers, you know? So I would say, man, the same thing, the exact same impulse, brother, of walking in the Spirit, listening to the Lord in His Word, listening for the Lord through prayer and Christian disciplines. I think that practice that enables me to recognize when I am getting in my own way, I think that same practice can be applied in all my relationships to look at someone else's life and help them, help me to see is there something unhealthy driving this person, right? I think it's the same disciplines, it's the same way of life. So I guess I would say this, Paul, the Apostle Paul, who walked with Christ, after his conversion on the Damascus Road, his time with the Lord of listening to the Lord and listening for the Lord allowed him to say, on one hand, I know that nothing good dwells in me. Says that in Romans. He's pointing out that in my own flesh, I have no power to work up my will to have enough morality to save me or fix me, that I need the gospel of Christ. That walk with Christ allowed him to see that in himself, but it also allowed him to write letters about false teachers, like in Galatians,
Yeah.
and to see the issues and deficiencies in them, right? So I don't think it's really, we are talking about two different things.
Yeah.
Seeing the brokenness in me or seeing issues or brokenness in someone else. But I think it's the exact same solution or the same thing we should be doing in both cases, which is listening to God and for God, learning in his word, growing in him, silencing our noise, knowing my role. I think all that helps us do both of those things.
Yeah. The next thing I want to dive into is you talked about how to engage in conversations when it seems like everyone is amping up the volume. That's the way our culture works. Whoever is able to be the loudest and almost kind of put the most just like force and volume behind their message, get the most people on board to repeat their message, is kind of the message that wins.
Yeah.
We're very afraid to speak against whatever the loudest message is in our culture, because oftentimes you're shamed for it, you're silenced for it. And I'm talking like politically, even on the left and the right. There's a lot of pressure. How can we as Christians live with a different mindset? Because that's a mindset that's of the world, from the world. And as people of the kingdom, we just don't operate that way. But yet we have the most important message. And there is things that we should be speaking into just in our friendships, in our family, in our businesses, in our communities. How do we not take on that attitude of just amping up the noise, but still having an impact and being able to speak into things?
Yeah, that's so good. I think a little, maybe a metaphor or a word picture would be really helpful here, just for people to understand, why is it this way in our culture?
Yeah.
Why is there this sense of just crescendoing arguments to the point that it becomes ridiculous and over the top, and it's kind of the way people do that?
Yeah.
So suppose, Nathan, that you and I were building something together.
Yeah.
Let's say we're building a table, because there's a table in front of us here. And this table came with instructions. So maybe we ordered it from IKEA or something, right? And it's in a flat box and there's instructions. And suppose you and I both had lots of experience putting together tables, right? And as we're building it, let's say we come to an impasse. We come to an impasse all of a sudden where it's like, well, I'm thinking the next step is this.
Yeah.
You're thinking the next step is something else. Well, because we both have access to the same manual, and we're giving credibility to the same manual, we can go to this manual and open it up and look at what we've done so far and what comes next. And so one of us is going to figure out who's right or wrong just based on looking closely at the same manual. And then the nature of the argument is not me trying to outclass you or shame you or speak over you. The argument is just, let's look at the content that we agree on together and who is closer to the content.
Yeah.
So that is how an argument would work, when everyone who's arguing is agreeing that they're looking at the same data and on the same foundation.
Yeah.
Now, the moment you get into a pluralistic society like 21st century United States, and you have all these different worldviews,
Yeah.
and you have, even in our culture right now, the easiest place to see it, this is not the only place, and people can over-trope this, but it's worth saying. I remember growing up in middle school and high school, and there's so much emphasis put on the Enlightenment, the scientific revolution, and this was applied to the body consistently, right? So it's like things that you can know about yourself because of anatomy, genetics, biology, physiology, reproductivity, just things you know. There's many academics in our culture questioning all of that, right? Kind of saying, perhaps all these things that have been stated scientifically based on Enlightenment theory and scientific revolution, maybe these don't really speak into who people are.
Yeah.
Maybe the way someone feels can trump all these things, right? So when that is going on and it's applied all over the place in our culture, we're all using different manuals.
Yeah.
And no one agrees on anybody else's manual. So it's like someone's flipping open their manual and saying, well, here on this page, it says this. And someone else goes, I don't read that. I'll never read that. I don't believe any of that. So then how are we going to argue? And if there's not maturity and humility and kindness and someone submitting to a God, if you throw that out, it's like, well, the only way to win this argument is who can be the most sarcastic. I mean, who can drop the biggest mic drop sort of statement that ashames that person and makes them look small and stupid? Because I dropped just the sentence and then they go, okay, I'm pulling out from this argument because I don't want to get blown up like that again.
Yeah.
You know, or maybe it's not that. Maybe it's just the absolute overwhelming amount of it. I'm just going to say the same thing at all caps over and over and over until someone is so worn out with it, they just let it go. And that's how I won the argument. You know, or maybe I'm just going to go straight to insult. It's not even good sarcastic witticisms. I'm just straight up like insulting a person and tearing them down until they pull out from it. That's what it gets reduced to, right? So I think that's why our culture's there. And so I would say where Christians are different, Nathan, is we have to recognize that we're submitting to the Lord who has told us how to live, has told us how to engage. And we have to recognize it's not our job to convince everybody to see it just the way that we see it. It is our job to be faithful and to speak truth with grace, to be honest, to be people of mercy, to be peacemakers. At the same time, to be persecuted for righteousness. We're trying to make peace and we're giving lots of mercy, but we're willing to be persecuted for standing up for righteousness. But we're doing this before the eyes of God to be faithful. We're not doing this to get a particular result.
Yes.
You know, that this person is going to believe or think what I want them to think, or this person is going to vote this way, or this thing's going to go this way because of the arguments I'm making. We have to let all that go and just be faithful. And that's impossible to do unless you're aiming to submit to the Lord.
Yeah.
It's also impossible to do unless pleasing the Lord is in itself its own reward.
Yes. Yeah.
If pleasing the Lord is in itself a reward for me, then I can sleep at night with joy if I'm standing on something with courage and truth and mercy and just letting the chips lie where they lie on how anybody else views it. But if I'm saying I'm a believer, but pleasing the Lord really isn't a reward of its own, that's going to show up in my life.
Yeah.
Because being faithful isn't enough for me.
Yeah.
I've got to get people to see it my way, to think my way, to go my way. And it's going to show up in how I communicate and how I live, because I'm going to be probably kind of naggy about things, and I'm going to be petty about things.
Yeah.
And I'm going to resort to the world's tools of how can I get sarcastic enough, or blow this person up enough, or get angry enough, or write in all caps enough. Is that making sense, or kind of connecting
100%.
on all that? I think that's why our culture's where they are, brother. And I think that Christians just have to get comfortable with, you know, or even as Paul talks about work as though you are not working for man, but unto the Lord.
Yes.
I would say argue as though you're not just trying to convince other people, but to be faithful before the Lord, right?
I mean, Paul even says too, are you living for the approval of man, or are you living for the approval of God?
Yep.
And when you're having these conversations, like you said, is it about winning the argument, or is it about winning the heart? Because really, we're not warring against flesh and blood. Oftentimes the argument or the conflict isn't even the thing that is the most important. What's the most important is that person's heart moving towards Christ, and then he does the rest of the work. And if you're not able to lead in gentleness and in meekness and in kindness, you're going to have a hard time approaching them in a way and really showing them who Jesus is. I think that's honestly should be the ultimate goal. Is we can never do this 100%, but that when we're having conversations with anyone, that they would see a piece of Jesus in us, that we would imitate Christ, that we'd be like him, and that they would experience him in a small way, obviously a very broken way, but in a small way. And if we're trying to insult someone, or you see this in politics a lot, and unfortunately, I think you see it a lot in Christians in just the way that they talk about politics. We talk about politics in a very sarcastic way. This person that holds this view is dumb. This person that's so stupid, or that's crazy, or whatever. Oftentimes it's very demeaning language. And if you're not able to talk in a way about all people as that they're made in the image of God, that they have value and that they're loved by him, you're just going to be pushing people away. I liked also what you had to say about it's not passive though too. You're like, you can't just be sitting back and be like, I'm not going to have a conversation at all. It's really just a courageous faithfulness.
Agreed. One place where Jesus does this incredibly well, Nathan, there's this awesome scene in the Bible. I love this scene. Where the Pharisees come to Jesus and they say, tell us about yourself.
Yeah.
Are you from God? Like you say you are. Are you getting these words like from God? You're connected to the Father like it sounds like you're saying, or are you not? Like, tell us where your authority comes from. We want to know all about your authority. So then Jesus says to them, okay, I'll tell you that. But first you tell me, where does John the Baptist's authority come from?
Yeah.
Answer that question, and then I'll answer yours. Well, and the Bible says the Pharisees get together because this is a public conversation. There's many people listening in to this sort of public debate between Jesus and the Pharisees. And the Pharisees essentially whisper among themselves, well, we don't think John the Baptist is legit. But if we say that, all these people are going to basically riot against us. They're going to push against us because they do follow John the Baptist. But then if we say that John the Baptist's authority is from God, then we're basically saying that Jesus is from God because John the Baptist witnessed to Jesus. So they just turn to Jesus and they say, we don't know.
Yeah.
We can't answer your question. And then Jesus says, then I won't answer your question. And Jesus is being honest. There's mercy here. He's not just dropping this bomb on these guys. He's not trying to destroy all their credibility in front of everybody in some way, but he's leading them down a direction that if they want to walk toward this, terrible decision of, hey, we're going to build our lives not really around truth, but around just trying to keep the public opinion of ourselves and some of that, Jesus lets them walk that way if they want. So I think there's lots of issues in our culture that we can speak to bravely, courageously, kindly. I think that we just point people toward these inconsistencies that we see.
Yeah.
You know, we say, this is what we say on one hand, but this is what we see. This doesn't seem to make sense.
Yeah.
And we just draw people toward aiming and seeing some of that truth and coming to their own conclusions. And of course, some people are going to deny that and they're going to say, well, that's not how it is. And we just leave that to the Lord, you know? But yeah, I think sometimes for fear of making someone look bad or look small, maybe we don't say anything at all.
Yeah.
But that's not helpful either.
Yeah.
I mean, if someone's living in a total inconsistency that's hurting other people, that needs to be pointed out. But there are ways of doing that by just dealing with the data in front of us and not so much just jumping straight to, you're a total idiot.
Yeah.
You know?
Like attacking the person.
Just attacking. There's ways of getting there. And Jesus does it all the time. Now, man, he later talks to the Pharisees when they get to the point later in Jesus' ministry where they have now seen and he knows they've seen. He knows that they realize these miracles are real, these things are happening, and yet they still are now just straight up lying to keep people from Jesus and drawing them to themselves. And now he's starting to say things like, woe to you, brood of vipers. Woe to you, whitewashed tombs. So when the data becomes clear that you are just absolutely serving yourself to destroy others, Jesus speaks in no uncertain terms about the fact that they're walking in evil ways, you know?
But
and there's a place for that too.
Yeah, that's also typically, though, I don't know if we even see Jesus do that, though, with non-religious leaders.
Correct.
Like he uses that language for people that are taking the scripture, taking spiritual authority, manipulating it, and leading people astray.
That's right.
That's like what his main concern is about, it seems like.
Yes. No. And I would say that the main concern is with the Pharisees because they know the Old Testament so well.
Yeah.
That as his ministry goes on, he knows that they know.
Yeah.
He knows. I mean, and you see that at the end of the Gospels where they pay the guards to tell lies that the disciples came and stole the body. They know the body wasn't stolen.
Yeah.
They don't want to believe he was risen, so they just come up with money to bribe people to make things up. So Jesus said, you know what you're seeing.
Yeah.
You refuse to acknowledge it. And you're doing it to harm other people. So I don't know if I would restrict that to just religious people.
Yeah.
But I would just think it's a scenario when someone is not just confused, or believing something that's not true, but they've come to see what is true, and there is a commitment to this in order to hurt or to fleece or to ruin other people.
That's a good distinction.
Jesus at that point is very clear about the fact that they're walking in wickedness and they're being evil,
Yeah, that's a good distinction. I think the core of a lot of this too is, and we've talked about this a little bit, but you have to know who you're living for as far as approval, because if you don't know who you are as far as your identity is fully in Christ, and you're looking for other people's approval to prop you up, as far as like you need how other people see you is kind of almost how you see yourself. You're going to be tossed around your whole life from spot to spot and never really be able to be that person that's anchored in truth and able to guide people faithfully.
Yes.
And I know for me, there was a season where I lived my whole life caring about the approval of other people. And I was that person that was like tossed from thing to thing. And there came a breaking point for me where I spoke truth, and it upset a lot of people on both sides of the issue. And I couldn't sleep at night for a long time because I was so torn up about that people viewed me negatively.
Yep.
And that people, would say things that weren't true and talk about things that weren't true. And that was my first time in my life that I had to stop controlling the narrative, and I had to just let the chips fall where they fell. And I think it's important. Hopefully it's not that dramatic sometimes, but it's like we should always be checking in of where is our affirmation coming from?
Amen.
And who are we trying to impress? And I wouldn't want to go back through that. So hopefully I check in enough so that I don't have to learn that lesson again.
Brother, I think I've gone through seasons like that. Nathan, I think anyone who's honest has had moments in life where it just feels so crushing.
Yeah.
When you feel like someone disapproves of you, or doesn't want you in some way, whether it's a family issues like a father figure or friend issues or in a church or whatnot.
Yeah.
And maybe the thing I would just warn people against is, it's a problem to be so tuned into what others think that it keeps us from being faithful. It's also a problem to lean so hard against that someone just says, you know what, I'm going to be faithful and I'm just going to steel myself, steel, like hard steel. I'm going to steel myself against what anyone thinks or says.
Yeah.
Because all I care about is God's faithfulness. And I don't want to be one of these wimpy Christians who cares about being winsome and winning hearts and some of that. I don't want to fall into all that nonsense. I'm just going to be strong and faithful and stalwart for Jesus. You don't see that in Paul's ministry at all either, or Jesus's ministry. So I guess it goes back to, brother, we just have to be wise people that aren't one-trick ponies.
Yeah.
There are some people in the world that are hurting others, but they are very confused. And like a tax collector or a prostitute or something that Jesus is going to give great compassion to. There are others that are hurting people that Jesus just calls out. He's perfectly wise and he knows the difference, and we should walk in the Spirit and trust the Lord and seek wisdom to know that we can't be one-trick pony people that are just like, well, we're just going to be as winsome as we can in every situation and never say anything that's radically offensive. Or I'm just going to be offensive all the time because I don't want to be this or that. No, there's going to be moments and situations that you're going to say something that maybe in a room it's going to feel offensive, but you're walking in the Spirit and you've prayed this through and you're sensing this is a truthful thing that needs to be said. And other moments where it's different. It's just we can't. I think, marry ourselves just one strategy.
Yeah.
You know?
I think too, though, if you are taking on the posture of like, I'm not going to be winsome and I'm going to have this kind of say it how it is, I actually don't think you're living for the approval of God either. I think that you're actually, whatever has maybe happened in the past, you felt this need to put up all these walls to where it's like I can never be hurt because I'm going to just kind of like blast these walls up and like no one's going to be able to get past them. And it's going to almost even kind of turn people away. And then I can be like, I'm faithful to the truth.
So
and then
true.
I never have to deal with any type of like nuance or anything. And I think that's also living for the approval almost of yourself then instead of the approval of God. So I think it does go back to that.
I agree.
And I think as Christians, we have to be willing to, because of the forgiveness that God's given us and the grace that he's given us, and that should soften our hearts all the time so that we never need to build walls up, that we can courageously move forward with a soft heart, an exposed heart even, and know that if something happens and we get hurt, we're still loved and known by him.
Yeah.
So.
Amen. You know, Mormons, I'll bring them up for a moment. They don't believe in historic Christology.
Yeah.
They do not hold to the Trinity. So they have a lot of the accoutrements of Christianity, but the main thing that matters most, the identity of Jesus Christ, is distorted in Mormon theology.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of legalisms of, you can't drink tea, and there's certain food laws and different life laws that really are pretty legalistic, right?
Yeah.
And as everyone knows, there's a kind of a missionary phase for Mormons where, young men from the ages of roughly 18 to 21 or so will go do missionary work. Well, sometimes in Mormon communities, you can hear someone saying, well, the reason why we're rejected or made fun of or some of those things is because we have the truth. Mm-hmm. But that's not the reason.
Yeah.
The reason why there's rejection there is because there's a particular way of approaching this where someone looks at it and says, is it really so central that no one has any caffeine? Is that really what God wants from us? And these particular beliefs, is this the center of the truth? In other words, this is a community that's constantly being encouraged by, we're catching headwinds because we have the truth. But they're taking all these pieces of Christianity and throwing out the most important piece, which is the identity of Jesus Christ. Well, sometimes Christians who have the identity of Jesus Christ correct, but they have this posture of, we don't need to be winsome.
Yeah.
We're going to do our thing and be faithful. And if people are offended by us, it's because we have the truth and they don't. Well, they may be offended by you because you're just being very unwise.
You're just a jerk.
You're being a jerk. You're being a bonehead, and that's why that's happening. So that we got to be careful as Christians to say, well, we're being persecuted and the world rejects us because we're the ones with the truth. Well, cults have said that for centuries.
Yeah.
Who don't have the truth. They said for centuries, we're getting pushback because we have the truth. So Christians got to be careful.
Well, thank you so much for having this conversation. Always appreciate it.
Love being on, Nathan. It's so good to talk with you, brother.
Yeah.